So let's take a closer look at the Supreme Court ruling with the help from an expert. And for that, I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Kim Keechang, law professor at Korea University's Law School. Professor Kim, thank you very much for coming in today.
Hi, thank you.
So, as we've been hearing, the top court has ordered a retrial of bribery cases of former President Park, confidant Choi Soon-sil, and most notably Samsung heir apparent Lee Jae-yong. Can you break down for us what this means and maybe the reasoning behind the latest ruling?
I think first of all, for those who are not familiar with Korean criminal procedure, it is important to understand that under Korean law, not only the defendant, but also the prosecution may appeal. So in this case, both sides appealed, and the Supreme Court ruled that the lower court's decision, there were some errors. And then the court remanded the case back to the appellate court, back to the lower court. But overall, it was the prosecution who prevailed in the sense that all three defendants, well, at least Lee Jae-yong and Park Geun-hye, their situation is somewhat worse than before. In the case of Choi Soon-sil, slightly better than before, but it seems that more or less the same for Choi Soon-sil. But for Mr. Lee and for former President Park, today's Supreme Court ruling is not a very good news for them.
Now, talking about those so-called errors that the lower court had made, the Supreme Court said that there are a couple of cases where they said did actually constitute bribes, where the lower court didn't include them. Those including 3 horses worth millions of dollars given by Samsung to Choi Soon-sil's daughter for her equestrian training, because she was her daughter was an equestrian athlete, as well as a separate donation by the firm to Choi Soon-sil's somewhat shady sports foundation or organization that was set up by Choi Soon-sil. All in all, the top court says that he should be charged with just over $4 million more worth of bribes. So they're saying the lower court's decision that weren't bribes are now should be considered bribes. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think this will mean he has any chance of going back to jail?
Those two issues, one is whether the money given for the horses constituted bribe. The other is money given to this organization constituted bribe. These two issues, the lower court's rulings differed. The very first instance court found that they constituted bribe. At the appellate court level, the court found that that did not constitute bribe. Now, the Supreme Court obviously does not deal with fact-finding. Supreme Court bases its ruling on the facts found by the appellate court, ultimately. And the Supreme Court analyzed that those facts in law constituted bribe. Therefore, the appellate court committed an error of law. They should have ruled that on the basis of those facts, they should have ruled Lee Jae-yong guilty of bribery. So that was the ruling about Lee Jae-yong. Now, whether that means Lee Jae-yong now faces actual jail sentence, at the moment, Lee Jae-yong is under suspended jail sentence. Now that the amount of bribery was substantially increased, and then if some or most of those money were found to be not Mr. Lee's personal money, but Samsung's corporate money, then Lee Jae-yong will also have to face embezzlement charges as well. So just roughly speaking, I think there is slightly, or depending on how you see it, significantly increased possibility that at the new trial, Lee Jae-yong might have to face actual imprisonment sentencing. But then everything is still open, and it all depends on the appellate court's finding.
All right. I wish we do have a few more questions, but I'm afraid we've run out of time for the time being. But you will be coming back for News in Depth after our newscast, so don't go too far. In the meantime, thank you for your insights.
Thank you.